There's something strange about the way most people try to manifest, something that feels like effort without movement, like saying all the right affirmations, visualizing every single day, trying to stay positive all the time, yet nothing really changes. It's frustrating, confusing, and for many, it feels like maybe this stuff just doesn't work. But the real reason things don't change isn't because the desire is too big, or the timing is wrong, or the universe isn't listening. The real reason is that the mood hasn't been caught. Not the mood of wanting, but the mood of having. That invisible emotional tone that says, "This is mine. I've got it. It's done." Neville Goddard taught something that most people overlook because it sounds so simple, so casual, so poetic, that it's easy to miss how deeply powerful it really is. He said, catch the mood. Not repeat the phrase, not force the emotion, not obsess over your thoughts, just catch the mood. And when that happens, reality shifts. Not because the outside world suddenly decided to be kind, but because the inner world changed its frequency. And the outer world had no choice but to reflect it. This mood is not about being excited or hyped up, it's about the tone of being. It's the state of someone who already knows it's done, who no longer needs to reach, chase, or fix anything. But here's the thing that most don't realize. If the mood doesn't change, the circumstances won't either. No matter how hard someone tries, no matter how many techniques they use, if the state stays the same, the life will echo that same state again and again. This is where so many get stuck. They think they need to keep doing more, when what they really need is to feel differently. Not fake feelings, not forced gratitude, but a natural inner shift into that quiet confidence. That calm knowing, that inner stillness that says, I'm already there. When that mood is caught, even for a moment, it starts to build roots. It starts to feel familiar. And the more it's returned to, the more it becomes home. So this isn't about trying harder. This is about catching something subtle but real. And if this mood can be caught, everything starts to move. Reality begins to reflect that new state. And manifestations come not as a reward, but as a mirror. Because reality always follows state. And the state always begins with a mood. So if it feels like nothing is moving, stop and ask, what mood am I living in right now? Is it the mood of someone who has, or someone who's still hoping? Catching the mood isn't about pretending something is real or forcing yourself to feel emotions you don't actually feel. It's not about repeating a bunch of affirmations hoping something will click. It's about stepping into the natural emotional tone of already being the version of yourself that has what you've been wanting. Not hoping for it, not trying to convince yourself, just letting yourself feel, in a grounded and relaxed way, what it would actually be like if it were already true. Neville wasn't talking about a fake state of excitement. He wasn't asking anyone to walk around smiling for no reason or ignoring reality. What he was teaching was about embodying a version of yourself that lives from the end. Not someone desperate to get somewhere, but someone who already arrived. That emotional state, that inner flavor is the mood. And when that mood is caught, it creates a shift so deep that the outer world begins to reorganize itself around it. It's like this. There's a difference between thinking about having something and actually feeling like someone who has it. That's what makes the shift powerful. It's not about thinking. It's about being. If someone wanted to manifest freedom, for example, they wouldn't just say, I am free over and over. They'd begin to move through the day with the energy of someone who no longer feels trapped. The body would relax, the thoughts would slow down, and the actions would start to flow naturally from that place. And this doesn't mean life becomes perfect overnight, but it does mean that the inner experience becomes aligned. And once that alignment settles in, reality slowly but surely starts to catch up. You begin to notice different opportunities, different conversations, different behaviors coming from you without trying to force them. That's because the state has changed. And once the state shifts, everything else begins to. This is why Neville said catching the mood is everything. Because that mood is a signal. It's a frequency. And that frequency becomes a magnet. Not through pressure, not through willpower, but through a quiet, grounded conviction that says, I'm already who I want to be. It's like tuning a radio. You don't need to build the music, you just need to find the right station. Once the station is clear, the song plays on its own. That's what the mood does. It tunes your entire being into a new experience. And the world will always respond to the mood that's being lived in. Most people miss this teaching not because it's complicated, but because it's so simple that the logical mind doesn't take it seriously. Everyone's been trained to chase results, to track progress, to measure success with outer proof. And because of that, there's this deep habit of thinking, I'll feel it once I see it. But Neville's message flips that completely. He's saying, you'll see it once you feel it. That reversal feels strange at first, even uncomfortable, because it goes against the way most people have been conditioned to experience life. The mistake is not in wanting something. It's in waiting to feel different until life gives permission. It's in thinking the outer world needs to show something before the inner state is allowed to change. But that's not how manifestation works. If someone waits for the world to change before they change their state, they'll be waiting forever. Because the world can only reflect what's already going on inside. And if the inner state is built on waiting, hoping, doubting, or chasing, then that's the state that gets echoed back again and again. That's why people use techniques over and over and still feel stuck. It's not that the techniques are wrong. It's that they're being done from a place of lack, from a state that's still reaching, still needing, still waiting. And that energy carries into everything, even the most spiritual practice. That's why Neville always brought it back to feeling. Not the surface feeling of being excited or pumped up, but the deep inner feeling of knowing, of being, of resting in the assumption that something is already done. People also get tripped up because they treat catching the mood like a technique. They try it for 5 minutes, and then they immediately look for results. But checking for results is proof that the mood hasn't actually been caught. If someone really felt it was done, they wouldn't need to check. They'd already be living from it. That's what makes this work so subtle. You can't fake this. You can't just say, I believe and expect things to change if the body still feels anxious and the mind is still waiting. It has to be real inside. It has to be felt. And that kind of feeling doesn't always arrive instantly. It's built by returning to the new state over and over until it becomes familiar. At first, it might feel weird, even fake, because it's unfamiliar. But that's okay. Familiarity comes with repetition. And repetition creates naturalness. And once it's natural, it begins to outpicture without effort. So the real question isn't how do I get what I want? The real question is what state am I living in right now? Because if that state doesn't match the end result, it doesn't matter how much work is being done. The state will always override the technique. Always. So how do you actually catch the mood? That's the part most people overcomplicate. They imagine they need to feel euphoric, or visualize the perfect scene with extreme detail, or force some kind of emotional high. But that's not what Neville meant. He was pointing to something far more natural and grounded. Catching the mood starts by asking one simple question. If it were already done, how would I feel right now? Not, what would I be doing? Or how would I act? But how would I feel? Because that feeling, however small, however quiet, is the doorway to the new state. Sometimes that feeling isn't even excitement. Sometimes it's just a soft sense of peace, a gentle relaxation, a deep breath that says, it's handled. I don't need to fix this anymore. That's the beginning. That's what the body listens to. That's what the subconscious responds to. So it's not about pretending. It's about gently shifting the tone of being from one of needing to one of already having. And one of the best ways to do that is to create a short, simple imaginal scene that implies it's already done. The key is this: the scene doesn't have to be dramatic. It just has to feel real, something natural, something believable. Maybe it's a moment after the desire is fulfilled, like sitting on a couch smiling, or feeling your body at peace, or hearing a simple congratulatory phrase from someone. And the point isn't the visuals. The point is the emotional tone behind the scene. That mood is what does the work. You don't have to force it. You don't have to visualize for an hour. All it takes is a few seconds of real, relaxed immersion in that new state. And if you return to that state often, not as a ritual, but as a natural resting place, it begins to stick. It begins to settle into the nervous system. And from there, the old reactions begin to fade, and new behavior starts to flow from a place of alignment. It's like slipping into a warm bath. The more often you step into that feeling, the easier it becomes to stay in it. You don't need to convince yourself anymore. You just begin to know. Not in a loud way, but in a quiet, stable, inner sense that says, this is mine. And the more that mood is lived in, the more it starts to harden into fact. That's what Neville meant when he said imagination creates reality. Not imagination as in pictures, but imagination as in state. And the fastest way into a new state is through catching the mood. The real power of catching the mood isn't just in finding it for a few minutes. It's in learning how to live from it. That means you're not constantly trying to get back into the state over and over. You're not chasing the mood like it's some magical energy that disappears the second something in life goes wrong. Instead, the mood becomes your home base. It becomes the place you return to naturally, the emotional anchor you move from no matter what shows up around you. But here's where it gets tricky for most people. The second something happens in the outer world that contradicts what they're imagining, they drop the mood. They panic. They react. They start asking, why isn't it here yet? Or what did I do wrong? But those questions only come from a state that hasn't fully caught the mood. Because when it's really been caught, there's no more reaching. There's no more proving. There's no more needing. The mood itself becomes enough. Living from the mood means trusting the unseen more than the seen. It means knowing that your inner state is the seed. And even if the outer world hasn't changed yet, it will. Because it has to. That's not wishful thinking. That's law. Neville made it clear. The outer world is a reflection. It can only echo what's already happening inside. So when the mood is caught, and more importantly, lived in, everything else adjusts. And that doesn't mean life becomes perfect overnight. Things might still pop up. Old patterns might still show themselves. But even then, the difference is in how they're handled. You stop reacting like someone who's trying to survive and start responding like someone who already won. That's the shift. That's when you know the mood has truly taken root. When you live from the mood, you stop checking for signs. You stop looking for evidence, not because you don't care, but because you already know it's done. That knowing becomes quiet, calm, unshakable, and people around you might not understand it. They might think you've stopped trying, but in reality, you've stopped striving. You've stopped forcing. You've moved into the identity of someone who already is. And from that place, action becomes effortless. Decisions become clear. You're no longer asking what to do to make things happen. You're simply doing what flows from who you are now. And because the state is different, the results are different. The mood guides you. It shapes the way you speak, the way you move, the way you think without you even trying. So the goal isn't to catch the mood once and then lose it. The goal is to catch it, feel it, and keep choosing it, even when nothing outside has shifted yet. That's how the shift becomes permanent. That's how the outer world eventually lines up, not because you fought for it, but because you lived it. So if this opened something inside you, if it helped you finally understand what it means to catch the mood, take a second and drop a comment. Share what mood you're choosing to live in from this point on. That's where the shift begins, when you name it, claim it, and live it.